Hello.
Morning.
Tell me, how are we doing with loyalty programs? How are we doing with that in the digital online age?
Well, I think that if you look around you, certainly the loyalty programs have become more pervasive. They're now on every screen that we operate on and what we look at. They've also become more complicated. And so that's created because they put too many long steps into it. And so what happens is instead of a stairway to heaven, you almost end up with a road to nowhere.
Okay, so what have we learned about customers and engaging with them through game mechanics, loyalty? I mean, there is that saying, if you want loyalty, get a dog.
Sure, I think that gamification has a place to play in loyalty programs. What I think you must remember about gamification is it's an act of engagement. It's not an act of retention. And if you put too much gamification into it, you run a risk of that you become hot today and gone tomorrow. Because you've got to keep evolving, you've got to keep innovating. So you put all that pressure on your loyalty program. If you put too much gamification in it, it's a great place to sell a story, but you have to stay real and relevant to the story and, of course, the brand.
Okay, gamification, that's a big buzzword at the moment. John, you give us a little précis of what it actually is.
You know, in a nutshell, it's using data to change behavior. Realistically, it's using fun to change behavior, and a lot of that comes from game dynamics, the mechanics of game design.
Are games stories, or are stories games? And if they are, who's the author?
Yeah, I mean, they are, indeed. Like a piece of music, like a book, it is a story, and it is authored by a game developer. I think the difference is in the perception of authorship. The player, the participant, becomes the author too. He or she can go in a variety of different directions. When I play Pac-Man, I have a very different experience to, say, you.
I was always very good at Pac-Man, huh? Be careful.
Did you go through the tunnel and chase the cherries?
No, not quite. But Nick, so I have a brand. Like, what are the sort of basic 10 commandments that 10 commandments, but a couple of points that you would think are important in that process of building a brand through loyalty?
Well, I think we designed what we call the loyalty clock so that we could track and segment people who are participating in loyalty over a period of time. You've got to make it simple to understand. One, that they get it. They always ask what's in it for me, so make it interesting that there's something they're going to get out of this transaction or journey at some point. And maybe they want rewards all the way along the line. You need good data. There's been a lot of discussion about data and big data. What I think you really need is good data. And good data it's a bit like porn. You know it when you see it. You've got to segment, you've got to cross-pollinate, you've got to become a utility. If you're going to be a loyalty program, then be useful to people. But don't be all things to all people. So there's a point at which you have to contain yourself. You need to convert all the way through to extreme loyalists and seek out the significant few. Because instead of trying to understand everybody, just understand the significant few in each segment, and that's going to guide the way that you're going to bring the rest of the herd along for the journey. Evolution, and of course a loyalty program is about selling. You've got to stay focused on the brand. The reason you're there is to sell your brand, and so stay focused on that. And those would be what we've discovered would be the guiding principles of a loyalty program, okay. A good loyalty program at least anyway.
And in gamification, I mean, is that process different, or what is the sort of footprint? What does the end user get out of that?
Yeah, look, I mean, it all starts with who are the participants and what are the behaviors. And in a way, that sort of is where it differs from game design. Right. When you make a game, generally, as a general principle, you work out the dynamics and the mechanics, and you put it out there, and you hope like hell people are going to come and play your game. With gamification, you start with the participants. You look at the data, and you look at those data points, and you design your gamification strategies with those participants in point. Right. And working back to what you said, you can't be all things to all people. And there's a disassociation with gamification. A lot of people think gamification is points, badges, and leaderboards. But really, that focuses on type A personalities. And in any program, you're going to have multitude of different personalities. So you have to really make mechanics for each personality type that would be in your program. And that's the clever bit of gamification.
You agree with this, Nick?
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
You've got to individualize each little piece of data to some point.
As far as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to get into analysis paralysis, but you need to understand the bits and pieces that work and then make use of them and move on. And learn as you go along. I mean, if it doesn't work, change it. Do something different, but don't go over a cliff for it.
Well, give us an example of something that has worked that you guys have been working on, in the past, like a while.
Well, I think the ShopRite Airtime Rewards program that we run for ShopRite, that's given them a database of 16.8 million people. That ties every mobile phone back to a transaction, so we can now look at what these people are buying. They're being profiled at the same time. So they've built an enormous database, understanding their shoppers and putting that to very good use. And I think the ShopRite results speak for themselves over the last 5 years. I'd like to think we did it all, but I think they've done some of it themselves.
Right, so when I went to get my tea and coffee, I'm now officially part of TMark.
Yeah, officially part of the ShopRite database. So,
Well, yeah.
But yes.
And for you?
Yeah, we did an amazing campaign where we gamified weight loss with a major corporate here, 7,000 participants. Weight loss is a very personal thing to think about. I don't want to tell people about how much weight I have and how much I want to lose. But through a very sort of effective program of using social dynamics, certainly a social graph, and engaging leaderboards and team dynamics, we managed to move weight across the entire workforce down over a 4-month period significantly. So you can take quite negative things and make them quite fun by using gamified techniques. And that was here in South Africa.
Well, I mean, that's... How does this... So there's this system. Obviously, you're using big data, and et cetera. But how does it translate into a digital space? I mean, obviously, it's data. I mean, I get that. But in terms of the end user...
Well, I mean, practically, you're looking at the data live. So in a gamified program, you're looking at the data. If, in a rudimentary example, you want people to log into your program 10 times, the data will tell you whether those people are logging in 10 times over that week. And if it shows that they're only logging in 5 times, then clearly if you're going to badge them to log in after 10 times, it's not going to work. So you change the rule, and you've got to do that very effectively, very fast. And the only way you're going to do that is by looking at the data in a live context.
Yeah. So do you think, Nick, that makes you then the author of that story? Or in those kind of scenarios? Or is the end user creating the narrative that Michael's just been talking about?
I think it's both. I mean, we've listened to a lot of stories this morning where, the end user or the co-author or the initiator, the stories evolve. And as we heard this morning, I think it's, stories will evolve in front of you over time. If you're a brand, though, what you want to be picking up is those nuances in the story that maybe send people on a slightly different journey, and you build that journey or content as you go along. I think that's the clever piece, is understanding when to build a slightly new journey or slightly alter the story and get your timing right on it.
And I would agree with that, because in any campaign, they are stories. The dynamic is the story, and there is going to be a fall-off in engagement, and you've got to be clever enough to start the next story, because every story has a beginning, middle, and end. It's going to end.
Okay. Going forward, how do you see all of this playing out in a South African digital space, or a global digital space, rather?
Well, I think in terms of loyalty, I think gamification is a disruptor. I think it applies the principles of more intrinsic principles to participants, and loyalties had to start viewing the participants as players. As people who play games.
Okay.
And acknowledge that in order to get that engagement that Michael Wu talked about, it becomes expensive if you're going to rely on points, and it's going to be relied on a physical doodad, where you can give quite intrinsic motivators to get very good results. And if the internet's shown us anything, it's about community, about association. You don't have to pay people for association. You can just give them that environment to associate.
Great, guys. Thank you very much for your time.
Cool.
Thanks.